When people seek to look backward in time, there is a common lens available to look backward through, and millions upon millions of people have used it. The time lens is located at the Israeli Museum. The lens is a miniature rendering of the city of Jerusalem in the 1st century. The model came from the creative mind of the late Avi Yonah, and in 1973, it was his view of 1st century Jerusalem and what it looked like then. Today, it remains the world's most authoritative representation of how Jerusalem and the temple looked in those days.
But is it accurate? To date, no one has ever questioned its accuracy, nor its authenticity.
Take a close look at the size, location, and design of the Antonia Fortress. Compared to the temple area, the Fortress of Antonia is very small. While Avi Yonah claims he derived his model's design from the writings of Flavius Josephus, on closer examination of the writings of Josephus, we will find enormous discrepancies between Avi's model and the actual writings of the eyewitness account of Flavius Josephus.
When Josephus talked about the Antonia Fortress, he said when you approached from the north, which is what we're doing now, this is the northern wall of the Harem or the Temple Mount. He said that the Antonia Fortress was so big that it even obstructed your view of the temple. If the Antonia Fortress was to the west and as small as Avi Yonah created it to be, then it doesn't fit the message of Flavius Josephus. You could not see the temple from this direction as you approach the north wall.
Now as to the Fortress Antonia, the inward parts have the largeness and form of a palace, it being parted into all kinds of rooms, and other conveniences such as courts, and places for bathing, and broad spaces for camps. Insomuch that by having all the conveniences that cities wanted, it might seem to be composed of several cities, but by its magnificence it seemed a palace. Flavius Josephus, Wars of the Jews.
A stream of Muslim people are getting ready to go up on top of the Harem. So we're going to go through this Lion's Gate, which feeds on to the Via della Rosa, which I think means the way of grief, and it's according to the Greeks. David, one of the things that grieves me to my bones is how they have displayed this Temple Mount model along with the Antonia Fortress. And this Yonah guy that claims that he used Flavius Josephus' statements and specifications wherewith to design his model. But I've read Flavius Josephus' explanation for the Antonia Fortress specifically, and what he says is not anywhere close to way the model that Yonah designed looked. I think the first thing that comes to my mind concerning his the size of his Antonia, Yonah's Antonia, is that it's really small.
Yes.
It just doesn't look like it could contain the numerous troops of the 10th Legion.
Josephus says that it contained, Antonia was able to contain a tagma, a legion of troops. And it's interesting that even the English translations change that word from legion, where it is everywhere else in Josephus, and they change it to cohort, which has no relationship to the original Greek term. So it's just amazing. It's not just the descriptors, those who describe graphically or through modeling Fortress Antonia, but also those who do the translations.
And not only that, it's everybody. It seems
Yes.
like it's in all his model is in all the encyclopedias, all the religious literature. It's kind of like the lens even the layman uses to look back into the 1st century. But that lens is flawed.
Josephus said that it was larger and more massive than the temple And this meant the entire expanse of
Well,
the
it wasn't,
Antonia.
it's 35 acres up there.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the size of the average Roman fort, about 35? 30?
Of the time that Herod built it, yes.
All the forts were modeled after a certain template.
Correct.
And the Antonia Fortress was even though it was trapezoidal, most of the fortresses were rectangular, and this is a little bit off, but it still was basically, in terms of acreage, the same size.
Right. Herod made accommodation for the geology of the area, which is normal.
Yeah.
And he wasn't specifically a Roman, but we can be assured that he used the best Roman architects and the best Roman construction methods to build this massive, massive structure, much larger than the temple.